Have you ever wondered what it might be like to be one of the original disciples that Jesus chose to follow him 2 millennia ago? Well, believe it or not, this Easter season we might be more like those first disciples than we think. For the first time in my lifetime, churches will not gather to celebrate the resurrection on Easter Sunday morning. In fact, most church doors will be closed and sanctuaries will be empty. What I find ironic is that we will be doing the same thing the earliest disciples of Jesus did on the day of his resurrection. On the first Easter, the 11 disciples sequestered themselves in an upper room to avoid the risk of death. We, as well, will be sheltered in place for a similar reason. If we were to gather in large numbers in enclosed churches, we would run the risk of contracting a virus that potentially could cause death. Obviously, there are substantial differences between the circumstances of the first disciples and us, but the irony that we, as they, will be sequestered on Easter is somewhat striking. So what were the circumstances of the first disciples that drove them into sheltering in place? Some were fearful that they would be apprehended by the Romans and crucified like Jesus had been. Others were confused and disillusioned because they had believed when the Messiah came, he would lead an insurrection to overthrow the Romans and restore the Davidic kingdom. But instead of ascending to a throne to reign, Jesus was hoisted on a cross to die. The realization that he was dead stunned them. How could they any longer follow a dead leader? And so, on that first Easter Sunday, the earliest followers of Christ found themselves isolated in an upper room, but in the midst of their fear, their confusion and disillusionment, something life-changing happened. The Bible says in John chapter 20, verses 19 and 20, "So when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and when the doors were shut where the disciples were, for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst and said to them, 'Peace be with you.' And when he had said this, he showed them both his hands and his side. And the disciples then rejoiced when they saw the Lord." At the lowest point of their lives, two things happened to these disciples. First, Jesus appeared, assuring his followers that he had indeed risen. Therefore, they served a living Lord. And second, he promised to be with them forever, which brought them peace, a peace that overcame their fear and panic. The reality of Jesus' resurrection forever changed these fearful, disillusioned disciples. In fact, they immediately left the safety of the upper room and spent the rest of their lives boldly presenting themselves as martyrs, committed to the spread of the gospel to the world. So, not unlike the early disciples, we find ourselves shut away in our homes. But maybe during this unusual Easter, we can experience the risen Christ in a new way and receive true peace that can only come through him. That's something to consider.